October Girls presents The Cave of Whispers. This story is based off lore from the Cave of the Winds. If you want more information, take the tour at the actual place in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Colorado, 1904. They say that strange things happen in the darkness. Charles Pix knew that was hogwash better than anyone. After 10 years of running tours through the caves, he knew the cave was nothing more than a tunnel. He led countless tours of fine ladies and gentlemen, trying to educate them on the histories of the stalagmites and the stalactites of the winding caverns, the formation of flowstone and speleothems over the course of millions of years from ancient oceans and mineral-rich water. He did get the occasional patron genuinely interested in the scientific possibilities of the winding tunnels, but in general, the people on his tours found it boring. But a legend? Monsters that hover just beyond the protection of your lantern? Mummies and angry spirits? Now that drew people in. So, he led tours like that too. Because he may love science, but he needed money. Either way, purchasing the land the caves laid within was a small gold mine of a decision. Mr. Pix? Charles looked down to see a small boy in a sport coat and shorts tugging on his suit jacket. His face was smudged with the dust of the caves, and a small scrape marks marred his knees. Yes, George? The boy, red-haired and freckled, held up a small hand, palm up. Me and the other boys were going home for the night. Can I have our pay for the day? Charles smiled, reaching into his pockets. Yes. The darkness of the Cave of Whispers was only as scary as your imagination. But sometimes imagination needed a little push, such as children hiding in the eaves of the higher tunnels, making small wails and, well, whispers. Charles produced the money, pressing it into the boy's palm as the others came out of the tall door that led to the caverns. They squinted, adjusting to the light of the dying day after spending long hours in the dark bowels of the cave. There were 5 of them in total, but they seemed to have elected George as their de facto union leader. Well done today, boys, he said as he looked at them, noticing something. He frowned. Did you collect and count the rest of the lanterns? The boys looked at one another, each equally puzzled as the last. Joey, said George, looking at the other boy. You said you would do it today. Joey, the youngest of the bunch, glanced uneasily at the black cave entrance, reinforced with wood. I don't want to go alone, Joey wailed, his chin wobbling. The older boys all laughed, sneering at him. I already told you it was nothing, George said, crossing his arms over his filthy chest. What was nothing? Charles asked, interrupting before a quarrel could break out, peering at Joey over the rim of his glasses. The scaredy cat thinks he saw something, George said, glaring at the smaller boy, who whimpered. It was really there, you guys. It was white and tall with horns and... Joey, you've been working in the caves for a year. Have you ever seen something like that before? Joey hesitated before answering. No. Well, I've worked here for over 10 years. Not one monster. Is it possible that one of the other boys perhaps snuck up on you? As if on cue, all the boys' heads swiveled to George, who bursted out laughing. The other boys joined in, pointing at Joey. You see, you'll be fine. The boys kept laughing, calling Joey a scaredy cat. However, Charles said, leveling a glare at the others, perhaps you'd feel better if you all went in together. They sobered immediately. George, of course, was the first to speak, striding to Joey and punching him in the shoulder amicably. Yeah, we'll all go away with you. You'll see. Charles watched as the others grumbled in agreement. Eventually, Joey softened. He nodded. Charles fished out a large key from within his pocket, handing it to Joey. "Lock up as you leave," he said, turning away from the boys just in time to see them close the door to the caverns behind them. Charles sat up in bed, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Light was barely on the horizon. Who would be bothering him this early? Grumbling, he shrugged into his jacket, massaging his face, trying to wake up. He pulled the door open without preamble, ready to yell at the unfortunate fool who awakened him at this ungodly hour. Mrs. Snyder, George's mother, stared back at him. Dark circles went under her eyes, and her red hair hung loose about her face. She wore a nightdress, her arms hugged around her middle. "Have you seen George?" she asked, and other anxious female faces appeared behind her, the other mothers. Charles stared at them, his mind still slow from sleep. "Joey never came home last night," cried the other behind her, this one more angry. "Yes, ladies, they were collecting the lanterns when I left." "You left before them?" cried Mrs. Snyder. Charles shrugged away the accusation. "They're boys. They probably lost track of time. I bet they're still there." "Joey would never stay out all night." "He's a growing boy, ma'am. I did worse things when I was his age." Just then, Mrs. Snyder blocked his vision, stepping closer, her face thunderous. "You will go find them now." Charles growled to himself, his feet crunching in the gravel as he walked up the steep slope to the cave entrance. If the boys were playing yet another prank, he would dock them a day's pay for this. "You'd better be there," he murmured to himself, pulling out the spare key for the lock, the metal clinking on the ring. His hand froze. The lock still hung open. Shaking, he wrestled the door open, the air pressure shifting as the blackness of the cave was revealed. He reached just inside the door, finding his personal lantern hanging on a hook beside it. A flick of a match, and it sparked to life. Charles walked along the caverns, his ears straining for the smallest sound. Damn it all. Was his lantern always this dim? It barely illuminated the walls as his steps echoed and echoed. Charles always considered himself a rational man, a realistic man, a man of science. But there was something about the caverns this time that felt wrong. He stared into the darkness as he went further and further, the air oppressive and still. And, for the slightest moment, he could swear the darkness was staring back at him. But that was just his imagination. "You're frightening yourself, Charles," he said to himself. The whisper was alarmingly loud. Clenching his jaw, he swiveled as he came to an intersection of the smaller tunnels, barely tall enough for stooping. "Boys!" He called into the gloom. The call bounced off the walls, his voice loud as thunder. It traveled and traveled, eventually fading into silence again, a choking silence, like a predator holding its breath. No answer. "Boys!" Charles tried again, but it was weaker this time. He cleared his throat. "Come now. Your mothers are scared to..." Charles froze as the reply faded before he could localize it. He closed his eyes, trying to angle his body towards the small voice. "Where are you?" "Help me." "That's right. Keep calling me. Are you all right?" He was certain it was the upper tunnel now, the smallest, of course.
Help me.
Charles pressed an ear directly into the space. Yes, this one was definitely it. The boys would be in this one. Annoyed, and, if he was honest with himself, more than a bit scared, Charles crawled into the claustrophobic tunnel. There was barely enough room for him to cycle his arms in front of him, his shoulders rubbing on the roof of the tunnel. The only sound was his shuffling and that of the lantern being pushed along. Dust clogged his nose and he sneezed, nearly pushing his lantern over. Damn those boys. He didn't even take people into this tunnel. What were they doing here?
Help me.
The tunnel suddenly widened, his hands falling into open air. Damn those boys. He reached down, hoping to touch the floor, but he felt nothing. There was nothing else to do. He shuffled forward, slowly as he could, and eventually pitched forward, crashing to the floor after a moment of free fall onto his shoulder. It ached with the impact. His lantern clattered down with him, the wick going out. Darkness, full and complete, fell. Charles thrust his hands into his pockets blindly, grateful for the matches he always kept there.
Help me.
Charles' breath came in ragged gasps, his hands not quite finding the lighting strip. The voice was very close now. Very close. It had to be in this room. Joey, are you hurt? Answer me, boy. If you can call for help, then you can answer my question. His voice sounded harsh, but his fear was taking control now. His eyes strained in the dark. But he could see nothing. There was no light this deep into the caverns. Charles stopped trying to light his lantern, using his ears. A shuffle, the slap of skin on stone. Another moment of quiet, and a faint, scratching sound.
Help me.
The voice was getting closer, his heart thundering in his chest. Charles struggled to get his match lit. Once, twice, 3 times, and meanwhile, that shuffling got closer and closer. Finally, a spark and a flame. Charles thrust the tiny flame into his lantern, and light glowed in the gloom. He whipped around, wishing he had thought to bring his pistol. The room was actually quite large, larger than he had anticipated. And there, at the fringes of the lantern's glow, stood a monster. It was tall, thin, almost skeletal, with white skin covering its hairless body. Horns protruded from its skull, where fathomless black eyes stared at Charles. All parts were rail thin, except for the belly, which was swollen out from the abdomen. The thing held a small body up by its head, ragged strips of skin flayed with fabric. It called again to Charles.
Help me.
Dropping the small body, as it plumped to the smooth stone floor, Charles heard the clink of metal, and he could just barely make out a key tumbling out of the body's coat pocket. The thing was moving now, slightly sluggish with its full belly, but it was just enough for Charles to scramble back into the small tunnel. Fabric tore as he threw all of his energy into crawling. He heard a growl then, echoing in the tunnel. The growling grew distant, and he realized the thing couldn't fit with its swollen belly. But he didn't slow. He sprinted by memory alone through the tunnels until there. The light of a full moon shone through the door, a door which he slammed thoroughly shut behind him. He told their mothers he never found them, and to this day, it was listed as one of the town's many mysteries. However, as Charles reflected on the event, he realized one thing. Sometimes fact was stranger than imagination. The Cave of the Winds is still open for operation today. You can take a tour for scientific purposes, or you can take a paranormal tour, though the October Girls would like to warn you. Even the tour guides will tell you that legends may be more than just a story.